So welcome. You are here for the DBT skill session of August, hosted by DBT of South Jersey. We run these pretty much every month. Typically, they are on a specific DBT skill, but this month it's a little bit of a wider theme because I'm actually not one of the therapists. I work with DBT of South Jersey, but I'm not a DBT therapist. So my theme falls under the general kind of mental health theme. So I'm just going to go into who I am and why I'm talking about this topic. So the topic of this skills session for August is how your space impacts your emotional wellness, right? So how the energy of our spaces that we're in all the time can really play a huge role, and sometimes a forgotten role, in how our baseline feeling every day, our daily set point. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm going to close this door. Perfect example of how spaces can impact how we feel, having the door open behind me. Okay, so who I am and why can I teach on this topic? So some of you may know me from DBT of South Jersey. If you came into the practice around 2021, I was the intake coordinator for about a year. And then in 2022, I shifted roles and I currently am the executive assistant, or my official title is the manager of the magic, directly to Shailene. So Shailene Laureano is the owner of DBT of South Jersey, and she also has her another business called Rebel Mente, which is a consulting and training business for mental health professionals. She also has her podcast and all that. So I really just work directly for Shailene, and my hands are in both of those businesses. But I'm still very much a part of DBT of South Jersey, and have been now for, I guess, like almost 2 years, a year and a half. So part of the team, and I love the therapists there and all of the desk angels who I get to work with all the time. So that's kind of how I'm connected to this practice. And then just to kind of give a brief background on, how it is that I'm talking about this topic and what my experience with it is. So I do come from a family of healers. My dad is a DO, a doctor. My mom is an RN, a nurse. And my mom later then became a massage therapist, a Reiki master. My grandfather's a surgeon. So just growing up, my sister and I, we kind of grew up in the tapestry of a household that was just about health and wellness. And it's just like in our blood. But then also kind of through my own journey, I'm kind of a nerd, I read a lot. I read books all the time. Anyone who knows me, I'm a Virgo. I'm all about health now. I wasn't always, but, and I read a lot. So just through a lot of self-study and practice, learning things on my own. And then I've also worked, as you can see on the slide, a work history with various health practitioners. So when I lived in Phoenix, I worked in a chiropractor's office. And I also worked in a naturopathic office, and now, I work behind the scenes for DBT of South Jersey. So I just have a lot to pull from when it comes to energy, wellness, health, all of the things. It's like all tied together. And more specifically, when it comes to spaces, I have kind of had a unique history in that regard, that I've been a house sitter now for a little bit over 3 years. And so I've stayed in a lot of spaces. And that's kind of really where this came from. By staying in so many different homes and types of spaces, I just started to pay attention more. And, my body started to pay attention to the rooms that it wanted to be in. If I was staying in a home, maybe for a week or maybe 2 weeks, because people go on vacation or whatever, and I would gravitate, I still do, towards certain rooms, in a home. And so, that just gives you a lot of intel insofar as like, okay, is there a pattern here? What types of homes or rooms or spaces like feel good to me, and then just like naturally and intuitively, what type of energy is in a room. linking up to my next little point there. So in addition to house sitting, I do still house sit here in New Jersey, and I do intuitive readings. So one-on-one, like intuitive readings, you know, a mixture of everything, you know, people can bring to the table what's on their heart, their soul, you know, their history, and kind of just doing some soul coaching, if you will, either a one-off session or a longer term. So that's kind of all I do. I do a lot of like different things right now, and I love all of them. And I'm weaving all of that into this, you know, webinar, because it all connects, you know, our bodies, space, you know, our intuitive. You also have intuitive nudges when you're in a space, how you feel about it. And as you just saw, because I just let her out, I do have a kitty cat. Her name is Shimmer, and she's a wild cat. She came from the forest, but we take care of her, and she's a love. And just for fun, I am mildly obsessed with bachata and salsa dancing. It's my new favorite hobby. So that's me in a nutshell on a slide, which is hard to do, as it is with all of us, right? Fit our history on a slide. Okay, there's a pretty space. So everyone okay? Are we all okay here? I just want to make sure it's all coming through. And cool. So I'm just going to keep going. This is just a pretty space for you to look at. All right, so we're just going to kind of dive into the beginning. I want to kind of make sure we're all starting from the same point. You know, the title of this webinar was how our spaces impact our emotional wellness. And so I want to dive into, what do I mean by emotional wellness? Because I am not a therapist. I majored in social work, but I don't use like mental health, you know, lingo. But I wanted to make clear what I mean by this. And so by emotional wellness, I just mean basically your daily set point, you know, your baseline state. When you wake up in the morning, how are you feeling? The whole thing, the whole like kit and caboodle, your body, your mind state, you know, your vibe about the day. How's that feeling? And that is going to fluctuate, and we'll get into that, but that's the idea. And so I'm not talking about, you know, if you have a moment of activation and you get super angry and, you know, it throws you off for a minute. I just mean your baseline state every day, you know. And the point of this webinar is to kind of get into how we arrange our spaces or pay attention to them can help us to kind of raise that state wherever we might be on the scale, which I'll get to feel even better. And so just think about it, you know, when you wake up in the morning on a scale of 1 to 5, right? If 1 is the worst, like just life is the worst, you're not excited about your day, you don't feel good. And 5 is like, I'm obsessed with life itself and my life. You know, where do you fall every day? Where do you fall on that scale? The fun little question. I would say I fall around a 4, 4.5. I feel pretty fabulous every day. And I also think there's room for that fabulousness to like expand and be even more. So that being said, knowing your number wherever you are on the scale, I just made the scale up. It is nothing, you know, official in any way, just give you an idea of a range. Where you are on the scale, you know, if you're on the higher end of the scale, then your space that you're in every day is probably functioning or can function as an expander of how you feel, right? So your room, your office, it can help you to magnify that and multiply how great you feel. It's like a support, like a mirror, just like echoing out your awesomeness and how you feel every day. And if you're on the lower end of the spectrum, you know, maybe you said, oh, I'm a 1 or a 2, or even a 3, you know, just knowing now that your space can be a support, and just maybe by tweaking some things in your spaces, you can up your number on that scale and how you feel every day. Yeah, it can be used as a support and a tool. Yeah, your space can be used as a support and a tool to like up your baseline feeling every day. And this is also just a slide on some reminders that I'm sure if you are, in therapy here or elsewhere, that but a lot of things play into our emotional set point, right? It's not just like, oh, I can just tweak my nutrition, or I can just work on my trauma. There's a lot of things that play into how we feel every day, and that's okay. And it's just good to like name it and know it, and be aware of it. So I'm just going to go through the list here a little bit, but our genetics can play into how we feel every day. I'm sure, a lot of a lot of mental health issues can be genetic. So, genetics are a factor sometimes in how we feel every day. Obviously, our family and childhood and the environment we grew up in plays a huge role, and in how we feel every day for a lot of us. Trauma at any age can affect how we're feeling, and if we worked on trauma, or if we haven't, or if we're in the process of it, even while you're working on your trauma, you can have ebbs and flows of how you feel, and that's normal, and that's okay. The seasons of the year matter too. This is like, I feel like it's one that's very obvious in the winter because a lot of people, have or suffer from that SAT, seasonal affective disorder. But it is good to know your temperament and what types of seasons and or weather support you and how your baseline emotional set point is every day. I moved for 5 years. I lived out in Phoenix, Arizona, and loved it because I love the sun. I work out in the sun now in August when it's 90 degrees out because I love the sun. Not everyone is like that. So it depends on, I have friends who love the rain, and that is like their vibe, and that, their body loves that. So just kind of having some self-awareness around how your body reacts to weather, in the seasons, even during the year. It's helpful to know because you can also use your space to support and adjust in that area. Your physical health obviously plays a huge role in your emotional set point every day. When we feel great, it's awesome. But when we have pain in any way, an injury or like a chronic pain, or just you got a cold or whatever, it's the worst. And your just point of reference just goes down 3 notches or more. So, physical health plays a role in it. And your mindset is a huge another point of reference for how you feel every day. And in my opinion, that one, I could do a whole nother webinar on it. By mindset, I mean the perspective that you hold of your life, so maybe you're in a challenging season of your life. How are you holding that? What perspective are you holding around that challenge, whether you are in between jobs or you going through a breakup or financially, whatever it might be. That's a huge piece of how we feel every day is our judgment and our perception and our thoughts around our life, around what we're in. Is it an opportunity, or is it, I didn't do this right and I suck, and our body hears that, and then it becomes a frequency, right? And then it becomes how we feel. And so mindset is a huge piece. And let's see. Sorry. It's funny to not see people sometimes. So I'm always like, are they still there? Am I still talking to people? I trust you're here. And then the last thing that plays into our emotional set point, obviously, is stress, and of all different kinds. And these things ebb and flow, work, school, relationships, financial, all of these things weave together and ebb and flow. So if you look back on your life, or even you look back on this year, right? We're in 2022, from January to now, you might have been in a flow state, in the sense of you might in 2022 have been feeling really great and expansive and waking up feeling better and better, or maybe this is more of a challenging year and kind of an ebb year, and you're like working on things and very interior, and it's like kind of a struggle bus for you. I know I've had that in seasons and years of my life, you know, we all do. And so your emotional set point is not fixed. It typically will be a certain way for a good while, probably. But it is going to ebb and flow. And sometimes that means that it's going to go from being like in a higher place to a lower place for a time. And you need to know that that's okay. And that is normal. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that ebb. I always look to nature. I'm like looking outside of 2 windows right now. Nature as like the wisest teacher for us. And in nature, if you think of it, everything is an ebb and a flow. You know, the ocean, even our heart pumping blood, right? It's not constantly flushing blood up. It's contracting and expanding. It's this ebb and this flow, right? And the ocean is this ebb and this flow. And all of the things in nature are this like wave, right? And so it makes sense that our lives are the same way. So, you know, don't get too down on yourself if you're in an ebb of life, and know that your space and tweaking it can help you to kind of perk out of that a little bit. So we do have a lot of power within our own hands and tools for how we feel every day. You know, despite if we're in an ebb, we can use tools to our advantage to kind of come through to see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is my next slide. Just like how we can pull in supports like therapy, like exercise, or even shifting our nutrition or our diet in order to raise our daily set point, sprucing up our spaces can also be another tool to help us feel better every day. And the contrary is also true. If we neglect our spaces, if they're not tended to well and like lovingly and intentionally, they can work towards our like detriment and actually be part of the problem, bringing us down. If you're working in a room that doesn't get natural light every day for 8 hours a day, that room is a problem. You know, that room is like playing into some of what might not make you feel so great. So yeah, and I think like therapy, and I am like obviously like a huge fan of therapy, working out, you know, eating well, all of those things. Like I live and breathe all of those things. And I think our spaces are sometimes like the forgotten piece or the easier to be neglected piece of the puzzle when it comes to ways of, you know, tweaking up our baseline state, things we can do to make ourselves feel better every day. Okay. So either the environment I'm in supports me or it doesn't, right? So, and these are just, this is a little quick exercise you can do. Just some, it's kind of like somatic, like questioning with yourself. So to think of the room that you spend most of your time in, whether it's an office or even your car counts as a space. So, and your car, how you keep your car can tell a lot also. So whether it's your car, your office, you know, right now I'm in a bedroom that I also use as my office, things like that. So think of where you spend most of your time and then start asking yourself these questions and kind of seeing how your body feels in the space. So do you look forward to going to this room every day for however many hours you're sitting there? Like, do you love it? Like, I love this room that I'm in right now. I know it seems very blank, but in the background, but when I thought of offering, you know, where I was going to host this webinar, I actually ended up just choosing this room. This is the room I work in every day when I'm not house sitting. And I love it. I'm on the second floor. I have a view of nature. It's like super spacious. And, you know, I love being in this space. And so to you, do you love being in the space you spend hours and hours in? You know, do you look forward to it? Can you notice your body exhale when you sit down to work there? like really settle, really be at ease in the chair, wherever you are, or is it like you get there and your body actually does the opposite and kind of contracts and feels so like very tense and kind of, you know? Are you always having to make adjustments to feel at ease? This is like another kind of, just reading the energy of a room or a space is like, if you're constantly having to adjust a chair or a desk or a piece of furniture, wherever, to feel comfortable in the space that you're in for a bunch of hours every day, then like something needs to change at the root, because your body's not going to be able to just like settle and do what you need to do there. And then another piece of how we feel in a space is what is our vista? What are we looking at? When we're not looking at a computer, which most of us are, what are our eyes seeing, settling on? I love this room because I get to look out at the farm and the horses and the trees over there and the sky and the children who play in this circle here. And it's very pleasant to look at. Or if you're in an office, maybe there's a piece of artwork or, a very prettily organized bookshelf with plants and things that's like very pleasant to look at, or are you at, a cluttered kitchen counter or something that is like very frantic, like, and hard to look at, and hard to take in. So those are just some things. And then your back, same idea, are you always having to make adjustments to feel supported? So these are just like some things to take note of. These are like just beginning things when you're in a space, to know if your space supports you or not. Oops, I just went backwards. So all vibrant spaces have three things in common. Now, this is stuff I've noticed in my house sitting experience, and they're pretty basic. And you would be surprised at how often they are missing from people's homes and or spaces in their homes, right? I'm not calling out my clients. I love my clients. They all have, beautiful homes. And, just like every home space, there are some rooms that are, really have it on point, and then some rooms that don't. And so it's just, three things that I think are really need to be in a space for it to feel good to you. And so they're just like non-negotiables at this point. So does anyone have any guesses? What do you think they are? So funny. All right, I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to go with it. Close this chat thing. So next slide. Where's my mouse? Oh, there we go. It wants to go backwards for some reason. So these are the three things, and they seem very basic, but they make a huge difference. Oh, someone has a Q&A. That's fun. Scent, clutter-free. True. Yes, those are good ones. I feel like scent plays into the fresh air. And definitely clutter-free. Yes, we're going to get into that. Great answers. They definitely play a role. So these are the three, like, I think baseline things that every room should have in some degree in order for your body to feel at ease there and be able to do whatever it needs to do, whether it's your prayer room, whether it's your bedroom, you need to like sleep, whether it's your office. So sunlight, breeze, and or fresh air, and ideally a view of nature. And if not, if you're like in an office without windows, plants, some kind of plant life view of greenery in some sense of the word. And I experienced this just from my own times house sitting and like rooms I would gravitate to. But over time, being the geek that I am and reading books, it's like all of these things are also just simply backed by science. They're just things things that our body responds to positively. And it's no wonder, because like nature is our first home. Like if you think about our spaces, here we are in a house in the air conditioning, like kind of totally cut off essentially from the natural world most of the day. Not everyone is, depends on the type of work you do, but I know I am. I'm in a house most of the day in, a temperature regulated space with walls and windows that separate me from, the natural world out there. But in our soma, in our body, we have these like ancient memories of living out on the earth, and being so much more intimate with the elements, sunlight, the wind, plant life, even the animal kingdom out there. So when we can incorporate the elements into these like interior spaces, it naturally will give our body this like sense of ease and of home, right? And so we can kind of relax, and from there do our work or our prayer or whatever it is we're doing in the room. So yes, I want to move to the next slide. I keep going backwards. Sorry, people, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Yeah, so I'll come back. But I mean, these things have all been backed by science. Our body responds and needs the sunlight. It matters if you wake up in the morning and you go into an office that is dark or that is only with artificial light, versus you wake up in the morning, you sit at a desk and like the sunlight is hitting your space. Your body's going to respond differently to those things. The same with fresh air. I'm obsessed with the breeze and the wind through a home. People ask me when we talk about my house sitting, because when I do a house sit, I not only sit, watch the house and the pets, but I do an energy clearing and an energy read of the home. It's like this whole magical package. And people are like, what, how do you clear the home? Do you use like sage or Palo Santo or whatever? Like, what's your favorite? I'm like, yes, I've used those things, but my favorite way to clear a space is simply open the windows, like let all the sun in, let all the wind through the house, and like let the crosswinds blow through. So I always wonder if like the owners, like when they come home, because I pull up like all the blinds like as far as they can go, and the like curtains are all the way to the side to get like the most sunlight into every room while I'm there, and the breeze. And so it really, because I mean, that's like, if we're getting like into the energy, that's like chi, right? That's like energy, like moving through. The wind is actually, if you talk about feng shui, which isn't totally what all this is about, but the idea that the wind is like moving the energy, right? You don't want to be in a room with like stagnant air. So breeze is a huge thing. And you'd also be surprised how many people don't have screens. And so, I'm always hesitant to open windows because I'm like, I don't want bugs coming in, but like, we need to get some fresh air in here, Yay. So fresh air, breeze, I'm obsessed with it. I think everyone, no matter what season it is, even if it's cold out, I think sometimes we should open those windows and get some fresh air into the house. Just because we're always living in these like temperature controlled spaces, and your body loves the breeze. Your body loves the breeze. And now the last one is a view of nature. I feel like this like scientifically is pretty well known. There's like a study about people who are staying in a hospital and what view from their window they had, if they had a view of the trees and nature, or if they had a view of like a building next door or something like that. And the like outcomes were very drastically different, right? The person who got to look at nature much of their time had either like a quicker recovery or a better mindset about their prognosis and things like that. So why? Because again, our cells have this memory, this cellular memory of living out there on the land and waking up and not like being, like this all day on our phone, but seeing far and seeing green and seeing the horizon and the sun and all of that. And it hits something deeply cellular that is, again, like home, and so to have that view. And if you have a choice in an office, get a window office, get an office with a window, because it will only do you good. Yeah. So all of that to say, all of those, I just want to do a time check. Okay. Those three examples seem very basic, but they really are, it's really the point where our spaces and the energy in the space like meets our body. And this is where our body comes into play. And this is why I'm like always saying everything in our wellness, in our health is so connected, right? So, our bodies have an innate way of communicating with us. Many of these cues we follow all the time, not always, depending on our trauma history, of course, taking that into account. But, we were made and created to feel certain cues and know what those messages mean, right? So examples, what feels safe, like a lion running after you, or being with your family around a campfire, things like that. What feels good when I'm hungry, when I need sleep, when the temperature in a room is too hot or too cold. These are all just like natural cues that our body gives us. They don't come from our brain, our like logical mind. They come from our cells. And this is where I can geek out, so forgive me, but it's really important, I think, for us to like go there and remember that we are made of cells, and cells, each of them are like these tiny living beings. So even the cells in my body can feel and notice if I have real sunlight coming through, or if I have, office lights or not enough light, period, right? Or they're just living and breathing, and they make us up. And so they're constantly receiving intel and like translating it and trying to give us messages so that we can situate ourselves in the most optimal way for our health and our safety, right? Our health and our safety, to feel like we're in a safe place and that our body is like in its most optimal position, right? So yeah, our cells, like the slide, like I wrote on the slide, our cells are always doing the work of creating homeostasis and safety and tending towards health for us. Always. It's just like what they were made to do. And together, it's what our whole body was made to do. Does some of that get hijacked with trauma and all of that? Yes, that's not what this webinar is about, but that is also true. But, they were made to keep us healthy and tending towards health. So they give us cues. So while perhaps noticing hunger or tiredness is a bodily cue you are more accustomed to recognizing, right? Now you can take that to like the next level, right? So maybe it's like, it's obvious when we're tired and we need to like go to sleep, or maybe for you, it's like obvious when you're hungry and you're really good about going to get a snack or whatever. Now you can kind of take that to another level and start noticing, how does my body feel in a space? Whatever space, restaurants, cafes, riding public transportation, offices, all the things, your friends' homes. Like just start like noticing it. I mean, that's how I started, just by being in people's homes, so many different home spaces, and just like, where do I gravitate to? How do I feel in this space? Because either your cells will feel the sunlight, the fresh air, and see the natural world and kind of relax and like settle into the space, because #science and light particles and all of the magic that we are, or, your cells will register artificial light and stagnant or still or smoky air, or, looking at a blank wall or a cluttered desk or whatever vista it is you're taking in, and so it's like, where would you rather sit, So our bodies just give us so much intel and so many nudges towards what is like better for us. So just part of learning how to listen to that and reading those cues. So yeah, see, these things seem very obvious, right? Like obviously we would like a room with more sunlight than like artificial light, but it's like, I feel like we don't give our spaces enough credit for their impact on how we feel, and tending to our spaces kind of goes by the wayside. Just kind of finishing this thread of thought here. This happens, right, where we say, it's more important for me to just get done my work, do my workout, do my spiritual practices, whatever it is you do in a space. It's more important to just get that done than to like prep the space or adjust the space in a more favorable way. And my like question back to that, is it though, really? I mean, when you really think about the impact of a space on how you feel and how you work, I would say it's the reverse, you know, because here's the other like very subtle thing that I've learned also from staying in so many different spaces and homes. And just, it's, you know, just the principles of energy. But if your body doesn't feel good in a space, it's going to echo out into whatever it is you're doing in that space, right? So whether the space is for working, like you're outputting work, whether it's your exercise space, whether it's your devotional space of prayer or meditation or manifesting, if your body is unsettled and frantic, or is feeling like heavy or like, you know, dense or something, like not well in a space, all of that is going to color all of those activities, you know, and the impact of those activities is not going to be as high or bright or impactful or good as it could be, right, if the space were set first. So look at that, I got it right first time here. Yeah, so the impact of that activity that you do in the space will reflect the energy with which it was done, right? It's like energy 101. Your work will feel bland to you and also to those who receive it. You know, this is huge for me. When I am in a new home, I need to like suss out, where am I going to be working? And I got to find the place, because the place matters. The place matters. How I feel while I'm working, the chair I'm in, the view I have, you know, the space around me. It's like the first thing I do. And if it takes some time to find and or arrange in a new home, then that's fine. But it really does matter for how you feel. And it's also, I feel like, has like self-care vibes, because if you're going to be working for quite a few hours in one space, you might as well make it pleasant, you know. The next bullet here is, your workout will have less impact on your fitness because your cells are feeling crappy. This is another house sitting example. This is like where all of this is like coming from. In certain houses, a lot of people have their workout equipment in the basement. And I personally, it's like, I don't want to say hate, but I abhor basements. It's like the worst room for me to be in. And so when I'm in a house that has workout equipment in the basement, I take the workout equipment up to a room that I like. When I say workout equipment, I mean dumbbells, max, or like a mat or something. But like, I don't work out in the basement because my body, it's awful. I can't. And maybe you're a fan of the basement, and these are finished basements. They're lovely basements. I just don't like basements. So, but the idea is, I listen to my body, and when I had tried to work out in a basement, and it just felt not good to my body. And so now I bring the things upstairs, and I either work out in one of these larger rooms, or I take it outside. And your body feels that, you know, your body feels, oh yes, I love working out outside, or I love working out in this bright sunny room, you know, versus down in the basement that doesn't have any windows, for example, or something like that. And then the last example is just, if we're talking about a devotional space, right? Your soul will just feel less inspired. Your prayers will be less infused with devotion because you can't settle into the space you're sitting in, right? So if you're trying to pray or meditate or do your manifesting or your journaling or your morning pages or whatever practices you have, and like your space is scattered and unset, then you're not really going to be able to get as deep as you can if like your body could really settle, right? So yeah, all of that to say, I would argue that it really matters that you set the space first, whatever the activity is, but because how you feel in the space impacts the output of whatever the heck you're doing in the space. Same with sleep, right? Sleeping in the space. All of that, how you feel in your bedroom impacts your sleep. Okay. How are we doing? Any questions at this point? Thank you for being here. Dun, dun. All right, this is just a pretty picture of a space. And I'm going to skip a little bit through and come back. These are just some examples. I mean, this is just an example of like what looks to me like a dark, stuffy, musty space. So just kind of giving you an example, spaces can feel, you can feel that space through the picture and it's like not really feeling so great. Even just looking at the photo gives me the creeps. But I'm going to skip forward. I may come back to some of these. I like really packed this slideshow, and the parts at the end are what I definitely want to make it to, but I can come back to some of these things. I feel like clutter needs to be talked about. Clutter is a big thing. I'll give it a few moments here before I skip over it. The thing with clutter is just like everything, it holds energy, and so some hot spots for clutter. This is just a great picture of a kitchen counter, but as you can tell, it just holds energy and it's very frenetic energy. It's like, buzzing. It's like, your cells feel like if under the bed is a huge one. If you just have unorganized stuff under the bed, like that's a no-no because it's like, it's like under where you're resting your body, you just have all of this like buzzing energy that is not contained, right? Whether that's there or on a counter. Closets are helpful because you can't necessarily see them, but still having it organized, having it contained is helpful, right? So clutter does matter. And I know it can be overwhelming for people, like where and how to start. I think, start small, like don't try to do a whole floor or even a whole room. Just start with like a piece of furniture or a junk drawer or something like that. And this could be a whole, clearing clutter could be a whole nother webinar, but it does matter. And, don't be too hard on yourself if it's like you have a lot of work to do in that area. But it does affect how you feel in a room. So I would say if you're in a room in your home for a lot of the time, especially if it's like work, your office, and there's clutter, I would say that's a good place to start because wherever your body is spending the most hours, it's going to feel that impact of all that energy from the clutter. So I don't want to skip totally over it, but I do want to get to a couple things here. So I want to go into, we have about 15 minutes left, which I think is a good spot to go into the 5 elements. So when you talk about a space and, what I've learned from being in homes in so many spaces, also from my own nerdy reading of all things like energy and space, obviously I've come across a lot of reading around feng shui and the ideas of feng shui. Now, I am not a feng shui practitioner by any means. There are actually various schools of feng shui, that have kind of different belief systems in certain senses. But what a lot of them do have in common, and some threads that I have pulled and have found it to be a very helpful like paradigm or guideline to work with when looking or being in a space and being like, how can I balance this, right? What's the remedy to how it feels in here, are the 5 elements. And so I'm going to go into each of the 5 elements and kind of what it means, but the idea is that, you know, by having the right balance of each of these 5 elements in a room will help your body to feel at ease there, right? Will create a sense of groundedness, but also enough energy to feel like it's like a vibrant space, like the room you're looking at on the slide, right? So that's what I would like to go into these last few minutes here. So elements, so they are all kind of like the elements that are found in nature, and they all have different like color palettes that go with them. They all have different shapes that go with them, different visual aspects. And then in the bottom of each slide, I'm kind of going to give a little example so you can kind of get a feel for how you can use the elements to help remedy a room that might feel a certain way. It's kind of fun. I mean, I like trying to apply the elements to a space. I do it with my clients, you know, when I read their homes. A lot of, like, for example, yeah, we'll get into that. I could go into a lot of things. Okay, so the wood element. Contrary to what we might think, the wood element does not mean wooden furniture. We'll get to that later. The wood element is more the green vibe, right? It's more the plant vibe. And so the colors are green and teal. Plant, you want to think like green is a very yang or outward type of energy, thinking of plants, right? And trees growing and growth and thriving and all of that. And so all things tall, vertical vases or decor. Yeah, and then they hold the energy, you know, all of these things that have this kind of element hold the energy of growth, expansion, regeneration, things like that. So an example, energy example, what I have here at the bottom of the slide, you would add a wood element to your home when you want to enhance growth, thriving vibes. Too much, however, too much can cause overgrowth. So can feel like too much too soon and can actually look like clutter. So, or can cause or help clutter to accumulate. So, look, right, you don't want to have a room that's fully green and full of plants necessarily, unless it's like a greenhouse. There needs to be like an appropriate balance, right, of the green thriving things. And so if you do have too much green wood elements, you can balance wood with metal or earth for simplicity and grounding. And we'll get to that later. But this is how the idea of the 5 elements work, is like they all can help to like balance or neutralize each other, which is just kind of a cool, it's just kind of a cool concept that I really like getting into. And to me, makes a lot of sense. You can really feel the difference when you apply the things. So the fire element, just what it looks like my face is right now, obviously is the colors, you know, bright reds, bright pinks, bright yellows, and oranges. They all hold a little bit of a different frequency, but the idea with fire is that these are not pastel shades of these colors. These are like the full-on, like primary saturation of these colors in a space. Shapes that carry fire energy are pointed ones. So triangles and pointed shapes. Even, what did I read? I forgot what I read. Stars are also like fire energy. Modern and bright artwork or art of activities. Like if you have someone climbing a mountain, you know, like doing some kind of activity that is exertion kind of vibe. Lamps, lights, fireplaces, candles, all of that is the fire element. Sunlight itself, workout equipment even, and electronics also are fire element. And believe it or not, so are the cacti. So cacti are a very like different kind of plant, right? Because they're pointy and they just, yeah, they're just kind of totally in a league of their own. So they actually count for more of the fire element than they would of the wood element with the rest of like plant life in general. And fire obviously has this also yang kind of outward radiating energy. A lot of people have red in a kitchen type of space, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's warm, right? It's warm, it's zest, it's enthusiasm, it's passion, happiness. The happiness and inspiration vibes are more the yellow and the orange. This is also like color psychology, right? So, you know, there's so many things you can pull from, family schools of thought that you can pull from to make a space feel balanced, right? So, yeah. Examples in a space would be if you had too much fire energy, it can cause burnout, instability, overwhelm, or insomnia. So, like if you're not sleeping well, perhaps, now there's tons of reasons why you might have insomnia, but it is worth checking out what types of decor and color palettes are in your bedroom, you know, because if you got red and pointy things going on, you probably want to like adjust that. Yeah, but then on the contrary, on the flip side, if a home or a space does not have enough fire element in it, it's going to feel very stagnant. It won't be inspirational. It won't feel vibrant, right? Like fire's like, yeah, like such good energy. So you want to have the right amount of the fire element in a room, especially also even like when you're working. I'm obsessed with sunlight. And also I have 2 lights here on almost all of the time, you know, because when I'm working, I like the feeling of everything being bright, right? It helps me to feel inspired and activated in a good, like working vibe type of way. So yeah, fire element. Okay, next we're moving on to the earth element, which is like that. The earth element is like, when you think of home, it's because it has the right amount of earth elements, like the groundedness vibe. So, and if you can't tell what the photo is behind, like the earth element, it's like a bunch of clay pots, right? So earth is all of the things kind of made from natural fibers and natural materials. The colors are like earth tones, rusts, muted yellows, golds, all shades of brown, peaches, bronzes, I think I have a lot of, you can't see this room, but there's like peaches and bronzes definitely in this room. And so the shape for the earth element is like square or like cubes, rectangles. And yeah, decor made from natural elements. So clay, jute, wooden furniture is where this falls, all of the wooden furniture, brick, salt lamps. I also have textiles fall here, certain stones and crystals, and then like artwork that has, you know, earth landscape in it, you know. And the energy of the earth element is the opposite of the former 2 that we were just talking about, which are both very yang, if you will, right? Outgoing, outputting. The earth element is much more of a yin in the sense of like it's a receiving, more feminine type of energy. And I don't mean feminine, you know, in the gender, just like energetically, there's like kind of masculine energetics and feminine energetics, softer, calm. So all of these adjectives here, stability, groundedness, cheerful, right? If you think of like peach, even the color is cheerful. Also dependable. This is like of the earth, like the land we walk on, right? That frequency needs to be in a home in order for it to feel like home. Nourishment, supportive. Okay, so an energy example can just be, you know, if everything in your home is the earth element, it's going to feel way too dense. Everything is made of wood, everything is brown. It's awful. So that's like an exaggeration, but the idea is just to pay attention. I do see that a lot though. That was what I was going to get into with the furniture, was a lot of homes have a ton of wooden furniture in a room, and only wooden furniture. And it does feel very dense because there's nothing to break that up. It's like clay in there. And so, you know, bedroom sets can sometimes be that way. Even TV rooms can sometimes be that way. So I do see that a lot. And so to break that up with other elements in there, right? Like fire, something more activating, more bright. Too little can feel not homey or calm enough to really settle, right? So if you don't have enough, think of, sterile offices, doctor's offices or something like that. They do not have any earth elements typically. And so they do feel kind of cold and sterile. And that's what they're missing. They're missing but when you go to DBT of South Jersey and there's offices with couches and pretty pillows on them, you're like, oh, this feels like home. That's all intentional. Yay. All right. We're going to go a little over, so feel free to stay if you have somewhere to go at the hour mark. You will get a replay of this. But if you want to hang with me, we have 2 more elements to go and then we're done. And then I'll be happy to do some questions and answers, of course. So moving on to the metal element, I must confess, this is my least favorite, but it does play a huge role. So the metal element, the colors are white, black, grays, and metallics. They are typically the shape of a sphere or a circle. And decor made from metal, like vases, the fixtures, doorknobs and handles, things like that, pots, end tables, round mirrors, metal frames, coin, anything of that nature. And the metal energy is really good because it does kind of cut through a lot of cluttery things. So it's the energy of focus. It's the energy of simplifying. It's the energy of clarity. This is why offices like doctors' offices have a lot of metal because it is kind of like a clinical setting, right? So, but also even boundaries, yeah. I'm trying to think of an example. I don't want to go too far. The metal element also gives structure. If you have a room that is all earth element, it's going to feel like one big, pillow kind of. But so you need some structure with other elements in there. And a lot of times metal can help with that. It's also the element, with the color white and all of that, it's the element of purity, wisdom, maturity, wealth, and prosperity fall into that with the metallic vibes, achievements, right? Trophies are gold and metallic vibes. So that's kind of the energy of what metal can bring. And it can really be a remedy to a space that is too earthy for sure. An energy example, too much, like I just said, can feel too clinical. So if a room is just these colors and these types of decor, it's going to feel more clinical. I would say even a lot of sometimes modern type housing, or minimalistic and modern type housing feels this way. And when you go into a house like that, it kind of feels like, oh, this is nice and clean and not very cozy, right? Because it's missing the other half, which is fine if that's your style, but it's just noticing how your body feels in that type of a space. Yeah. And then the last element is water, of course. And so I'm just going to take a sip. Last element. So the water element. Water is the other part. I had mentioned earlier that breeze was part of feng shui, the actual words. And so water is the other. It's really, feng shui is wind and water, basically. And so water is also the essence of qi, the flowing of it, right? And so you think of in a home, all of the plumbing and all of that, it's all it all matters. So the colors of the water element are blue, and dark blacks and grays. And then the shape, if you need to bring in water, would be wavy lines, curved type shapes of things or decor. Decor with actual water, like fountains, aquariums, pools. I even have in this room, my kitty has a little water fountain. It's this pretty ceramic water fountain. And it's in my room. And I love it because it's she loves it, but it's also flowing water all day. And that's really good energy in a room. And then any artwork with water or wavy lines, decor with curved and round edges. So you kind of get the vibe there. And yeah, the energy of water it's the actual chi energy, right? It's the shui and feng shui. It's abundance, it's opportunities, it's the actual flow of energy in a space. It's also the flow of emotions and money included. And it can also enhance the serenity and relaxation vibes. I want to bring attention to why I paused there is, the color of blue, the vibe of water in general, it is the energy of emotions. And so it reminds me of a home that was a ton of the decor was blue. And I just remember being like, wow, this needs to be broken up. You can't have a whole house that's all blue. No, it's like not all blue, but it can feel when blue or water is overwhelming, it can almost feel too emotional or too lacking of boundaries in a space, and you don't feel grounded in that space, right? And so it is hard to settle there or feel like you can just have some stability under your seat or your feet in a space. And then lastly, an energy example would be leaky things. So this is another part of the water element in a home is the plumbing. And so when there's a leak that needs to be fixed. So if we have leaky showers, toilets, sinks, whatever it is, that can also impact how we feel, even like subconsciously, even if we don't hear it leaking all day, but we know it's leaking or it just is leaking. It's like that plays a role in the space, energetically. And yeah, like I just said, too much water element can feel watery and emotional and can kind of wash away everything. But like I said, there's like no boundary there. So it'd be a great example to bring in some metal to like hold the things, right? Or even, some kind of a boundary element. No boundaries, no heat, like living in an ocean, right? And we love the ocean, but we don't want our houses to feel like we're like living in it. Yeah. So those are the 5 elements and kind of just small examples of how you can remedy a room to feel more balanced, So just to kind of take all of that and apply it to the rooms you're in a lot. And if something feels a little wonky to you, be like, where are what elements do I have in this room? Is there an element that's missing maybe? Like maybe your room's great, but you don't have any plants in there and there's not a view of nature, so you need the wood element in there to make it feel a little more popped and like inspiring, right? So just little things like that can make a big difference. Cool. So thank you for being with me this whole time. We're a little over an hour. If anyone has any questions, or you can just enjoy this pretty slide that I found. I'd be happy to take some questions now if you have specifics about your space. We can linger here as long as you want, honestly. I'm happy to go over the time. So if anyone has any questions, thank you for listening. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A. So many fancy features in Zoom. Nice. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on. The last few slides are just like some housekeeping to let you know what's coming up here at DBT of South Jersey, where you can find those things, and a little bit about where you can find some of my work as well. So these are some of the things I do behind the scenes. I make QR codes for all of our fun things. So we do here at DBT of South Jersey have free monthly events. The next DBT skills session in September will be on the 8th. It will be at 5 o'clock, led by Sarah D. and also Mary has tagged in. And that will be on the DBT skill, the lesser known DBT skill called alternate rebellion. So don't miss that one. That is a skill I know a little bit about, and it is a very cool one to learn about. So if you do go to the link on this QR code. It should take you to our Instagram menu, and then you can click on the event that you want to sign up for. So that's what this QR code leads to. I see, I'm going to get into that question in a second. So we have DBT skills every month. We also have Ashley leads our family support group every month. That is typically the last Monday of the month. It's open to, all of these are open to anyone. You do not have to be a client at DBT of South Jersey. Family support group is just great help. She goes through and reviews a lot of DBT theory and practice for how to kind of navigate having a family member in therapy here or in DBT, or even just someone or just to kind of get a refresher on DBT in general. And then yoga with Alex. So Alex runs mindful yoga, also virtual, the first Monday of every month, typically, unless it's a holiday, at 6 o'clock. And that is a Zoom yoga class, trauma informed, open to all levels. It's very beginner friendly, a little bit of mindfulness and a little bit of yoga. So those are our free things we have here. Suggestions. Okay, so someone asked suggestions on ways to declutter space. Oh, that's fun. I could go on that for a long time. Let's see. I mean, I guess it depends on what type of clutter it is. If we're talking clothes, or if we're talking paper, or photo albums. It really does depend on the type, I would say. If it's a closet, like I recently with one of my clients, we did a closet. I would say first step is to pull everything out and get like a view of what you have going, and then start sorting. Typically you'll have a trash pile, stuff you just don't need and you can throw away. You'll have a keep pile, stuff that's like non-negotiable, you want to keep it. And then you might have an iffy pile, like you don't know if you want to give away the stuff or if you want to keep it. So like kind of sorting even into those 3 categories. I guess that could be applied to paper, to various types of clutter, things you want to keep, things you want to throw away, and then kind of things you need to make a decision about, would definitely be the way to go. And then, yeah, that's what we did in her closet, and it was like very helpful. And yeah, I'm just thinking, I would say a huge thing that kind of, yeah, you don't really realize how much you don't need, like how much you actually can give away or throw away, whether it's even if you have extras of a lot of things, or, I'm thinking of like garages and things like that. It's like, if you haven't worn it or used it probably in a year, you can probably give it away if it's still in good use, and if things are broken, to either fix them or toss them, but definitely feel free to message me. I'd be happy to kind of chat more specifics on Instagram or on Facebook, or however you want to find me, which I'll get to in the next slides, how to find me. But I'd be happy to kind of workshop a little bit more specifically on a room or, a project that you're talking about. So, yeah. And then next, this is just, I want to bring everyone's attention to Shailene, owner of DBT of South Jersey. This is her podcast, and it is a podcast on all things healing. So it's mental health, but it's also alternate modalities of healing, how people have healed, people's healing stories. So it's just a cool thing to tune into. It's called Tea Talk, and that QR code can get you there so you can follow it and rate it. And I will be on there in 2 weeks, so that's exciting. And then the last thing, this is me, like I was just saying, feel free to reach out. This is my Instagram, KellySue Fits. You can follow me and message me there with any questions. It's where all of my services that I mentioned in the very beginning are there also. But yeah, I just thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful to you. And yeah, good luck. Have fun rearranging your space, and may it really support you to feel feel your best and feel better and better every day. So thank you for being here.